Hey there, Rednecks, Preppies, Redneck Preppies. It's me, the Redneck Preppy. How you doing today? Great. Good. Now, 2 years ago this month, I released a video going over a piece of software available on Linux and Windows called Gordon's Reloading Tool. It's essentially modeling software for reloaders and hand loaders to play around with different combinations of cartridges, bullets, and powders to see what kind of results they get in terms of things like muzzle velocity, projectile energy, chamber pressure, and among many other pieces of information. Now, sadly, 2 days after my video released, the Gordon of Gordon's Reloading Tool passed away. Well, a few days ago, I got a message from a viewer who had downloaded GRT recently and noticed that the software hadn't been updated since 2021, and he was wondering whether it was in fact still viable. Now, my answer to him, and what I'm going to tell you today, is it depends. Now, I'm going to answer this based on two use cases. Now, this might sound like Captain Obvious stuff to you, but let's remember, not everyone out there is an expert. Now, I would wager that the majority of people who use software like GRT do so the way that I do, experimenting with the usual suspects. Now, I don't think I'm out of line saying that while the world of reloading moves slowly, it does move. New products are added yearly. That said, GRT's library of components isn't exactly outdated. I would wager that close to 100% of the powders and bullets listed in GRT are still being sold today, and certainly none in the library of cartridges have disappeared. Now, the only issue for people like me is that bullets and powders that have been introduced since the last update are not present. Now, unless Gary's Widow allows the components library to be officially updated by the community in a brand new release, which is, by the way, how a lot of that components library was originally built up, nor will they ever be present. Now, that said, as a reloader of the standard popular cartridges, I haven't faced any problems. Virtually all the bullets that I've used or considered using are present in the bullet library. For every powder I use, I will be obvious, I do tend to stick to the tried and true old guard, is also still there. Now, if I need to add a new bullet to the database, it's a pretty simple matter to do so. You can get the required dimensional data from the manufacturer, or just grab a caliper and do it yourself. So I think GRT is still a viable tool for those of us who aren't too exotic in our loading activities. And if you're a milsurp style person, I don't have much of a problem saying that GRT is gold for you still. Now, for those of you who are more on the bleeding edge and need to try every new 6 or 7 millimeter cartridge trumpeted on the cover of Hodgson's Reloading Manual annually, I think GRT can still work fine. Any cartridge or bullet not in the databank can be added by you quite easily. For new cartridges, if it's a SAMI or CIP accepted cartridge, you can get the dimensional data straight from them. Otherwise, you can hit up the brass manufacturer, who will probably be more than happy to provide it to you. Or just grab those calipers and have fun. Now, this next bit is where the "it depends" I mentioned earlier comes in. Now, if you were listening closely, you probably noticed that I've largely glossed over one aspect of the components library: powders. This one is a bit more delicate. Now, much of the existing powder data was either provided by manufacturers, and I'm referring to the European powder manufacturers. American manufacturers didn't contribute much, or the community. Regardless, there are a few issues with the powder database. The community provided data for powders is of varying quality of calibration, that is, how accurately they themselves have been modeled. Some powders have a high degree of calibration, others not so much. The refinement of that data, and therefore the quality of the overall cartridge modeling results, hasn't improved in the application since GRT has been frozen. And nor have new powders been added in a few years. The same 227 powders that were there in late 2021 are the same ones today. And for the most part, that isn't a problem, except if you want to experiment with those new powders and have limited load data out there that you can use or cross-reference against. Now, yes, you yourself, in theory, can refine existing powders or even add new ones to your local database. But unless you have the means of generating data for things like isentropic exponents or combustion coefficients, I think it's well out of the means of most people. GRT's Achilles heel is the powder database going forward. It's not improving, and as I said, it's not a light matter to add new ones. Now, all that said, there is a bright spot to all of this. Despite the fact that Gordon's widow has stated there will be no further work on the application itself, there is some hope. And that's due to the community that continues to use it. Now, while I'm no fan of Discord, GRT's official Discord has over 8,000 members and remains fairly active. Users of GRT are sharing new bullet and cartridge data, and there is still some work on modeling powders. And this data is free for you to download and integrate into the software if you're comfortable with doing so. And the community itself is pretty chill and doesn't seem to mind answering questions and interacting with new users. If you decide you'd rather pay money and use excellent software like QuickLoad, which is running at about 175 US or 250 Canadian, and as of this video, its data was last updated on November 25th, 2024, I certainly don't blame you. Though I would say that its components library isn't substantially larger than GRT's. It does have some banger features though, like generating ballistics tables, and it can directly interface with some chronographs. That said, depending on your use case, I think GRT is still a viable modeling platform and will be for years to come. None of its cartridges are going anywhere. The vast majority of bullets in its database have been manufactured for years, if not decades, and you can add them to them yourself. And over 220 powders isn't anything to sneeze at. Now, in an ideal world, Gordon's widow would have open sourced the software and someone taken over shepherding of its development. A small volunteer team plus the community could have maintained at least semi-active development and updating of the software. Of course, that is easier said than done. To develop GRT, you merely need to be capable of writing code and ideally also being a reloader. Now, I don't know how big of a number of people are in the middle of that particular Venn diagram, so I could be shooting my mouth off. I only hope GRT doesn't fade away given its many strengths, that so much work has already gone into it, and an enthusiastic community. Either way, it's still free and available for download. Hit the website. There is a link in the description, and download it for yourself. Play around with it. If it meets your needs, have at it. If it doesn't, costs you nothing to try. I don't think, however, that you're going to be disappointed by it. At any rate, I hope you found today's video to at least be vaguely entertaining and mildly informative. As always, I hope your trips to the range are always a pleasure. Take care, and bye-bye.